Okay, folks, we're going to dive into our shelter systems, which is, I mean, not one of these is more important than the other, but your shelter is most definitely something that's going to be a survival piece.
It could make or break your hike, honestly.
It could. It could make or break your life. So I'm going to start with what I use. Again, I'm at a Z-Packs. I am not sponsored by Z-Packs, by the way. So if Z-Packs would like to sponsor me, but no, I've really tried a lot of different gear in general, and I just have to keep falling back to the lightweight stuff that Z-Packs, and it offers, but it also offers a quality product. So what I carry for my shelter is I use a duplex tent. It is a two-person, two trekking pole setup. So you don't have standard tent poles. It does set up with 8 stakes to pitch it out. So it's a guy line system with 2 trekking poles. One of the things that we like about our systems is the lightweight, but the way it gets light is I have a single wall construction, and that comes with its downsides. Condensation is a huge issue. We woke up one morning after we had a rainstorm. We knew it was going to rain, so I closed up my tent, had all my vestibules closed up. I sleep very warm. My breath combined with the condensation in the air, it was raining inside my tent. Not from the outside.
And she's sleeping in puddles.
I was sleeping in puddles because I created it. It didn't leak. I created the condensation and puddles that were in my tent.
Although she did look for a leak for a good 20 minutes.
I did. I had to, right? I could not have created all this, but I did. So I have learned over the years how to mitigate the condensation, and there is some condensation you're going to deal with a single wall tent, and I would not trade my single wall for a double wall just because of a little condensation. So that's not why I do it. It is a double tent. I wouldn't sleep with 2 people in there unless I had to, because you would kind of be overlapping a little.
We could snuggle.
We would snuggle. We would be snuggle buddies. But knowing that we're hiking together, if anything happened to Jen's tent and Gets There's tent, we have seen disasters happen with other people's tents. We've seen tents fly off of cliffs, fly away, gone forever. We've seen wind totally destroy, shred tents.
Happened to me.
Yeah,
broke my tent poles.
it happens. And so being able, when we're hiking together, it's nice to know that if something did happen to her tent, we have a double that we could get by with one tent until we could get a replacement. But I like it because I can lay it down, I can have all my gear, and I do keep every piece of my gear in my tent, my shoes, my trekking poles are part of my tent system, everything, my sleep system, everything's in there. I don't have to worry about somebody stealing it. I don't have to worry about animals dragging my gear off, and so it works really well for me. But once again, it comes at a price. Downfalls. What about yours? Oh, so my tent, with my Z-Packs tent, I do use a Z-Packs footprint. I do 9 MSR stakes, groundhog stakes. So the total of my entire shelter system, which is all packed in here, my stakes, every ground sheet, is 1.58 pounds. And as you can see, it's really small. In fact, when I put it in, I put it into my backpack like this. I'm able to stick stuff on the side of it, so it doesn't take up a whole lot of room in my pack. Okay, Jen, what about yours?
All right. Since I'm visiting Texas, I actually didn't bring my tent with me, and I've had 3 different tents too, 3 different packs, 3 different tents. I've settled into the Six Moons design. It's the Skyscape Trucker. It is a double wall, and it also sets up with my trekking poles. I'll admit, the first year I took it out, I absolutely hated it. I didn't have a lot of practice with. There may have been some swear words involved.
There were lots of swear words, and they just were not compatible.
I hated it. I didn't have a lot of preparation with it, and
had you ever set it up?
I think I set it up once, but only once. So the first time on trail setting it up was on a pretty windy night. We were not in a great tent location. It was one of those, okay, this is going to have to work locations. And I sent my husband a text that said, "Oh hell no, send my other tent now." So I only hiked with it for about a week and a half. Before our next hike, I did practice a lot more with it. I developed a relationship with my tent.
They bonded.
We bonded, and I loved having it on the AZT. I do think the trekking pole tents stand up better against windstorms. I've had my tent pole snap in a windstorm. The downfall to a trekking pole tent is if you fall in the snow and break your trekking pole, your partner goes and finds you sticks.
I have been known to go and find big enough sticks to use in place of her trekking pole. And
we were just fortunate to be in an area where there were sticks. A lot of the AZT, there weren't sticks, and I would have been screwed.
And a lot of the desert on the PCT, you would not have had sticks.
Yeah. So. My tent uses 6 tent stakes, and I use the carbon, the really lightweight carbon tent stakes for that. I also have the ground sheet, and my setup comes in at 2 pounds. So she's 1.58 and I'm 2 pounds, but I have the double wall, and I think that's probably where the weight comes in.
It does, and mine, I think hers is longer in length because she puts her pack below her feet. I couldn't do that. Mine has to go next to me, but mine's double wide. You know, I'm in a double wide, you're in a single wide. The one thing that we will say about a trekking pole tent versus a tent with tent poles. Your one that you use freestanding tent she had before,
my Fly Creek.
Or Fly Creek, the shot cord within the poles stretched out and would not hold the tent. And
so I had to order a replacement for the company, pick it up at a post office in town. We spent a hotel night with her husband trying to record the thing. It was a pain in the ass. I do like not having tent poles to deal with. They're kind of a pain in the butt. On the upside, it makes putting up your tent really, really easy. I mean, you just throw your tent up, throw your packing, you're fine. So it's a little easier to set up a freestanding tent, I think, but
takes less
I don't
time.
think it's worth the wait or the hassle of tent poles.
No, and tent poles, in our type of backpacks, you're so limited on what pockets you have and where you would carry them. And so they can puncture your backpack, they can tear your tent if you're not careful. There's lots of things, downsides to having all these tent poles. And they don't pack down as small as our tents do. I mean, the tent poles are, a few feet long. And so we just found that, we had a freestanding tent on our first PCT through hike, our first 2 through hikes. So when I went solo is when I went to a trekking pole setup, and it's worked well for me.
I do think the trekking pole setups handle better in the wind. I do think they're a little more stable, just a little more taut, and the wind treats them a little differently. So, for wind, I like my trekking pole tent better.
I think the whole design of the trekking pole tents are set up to deflect the wind and to handle the wind if you set it up correctly. And there are people I know that have never been able to set up their Z-Packs tents correctly because they've never really paid attention. And there is a proper way to set it up with the wind and the conditions and things like that. But once you know how to use your gear and you use it properly, I believe my tent has stayed. We have never had our tents blow over and we've been in some really
I've been
bad.
head-butted by an animal through my tent before.
I had a deer
trip over her guidelines and
I
fall
had
on
a
her
deer, I scared it in the middle of the night. It was looking in my screen of my tent and I didn't know it was a deer. I thought it was a raccoon or something. And so I took my headlamp and shined it out the door and it literally was a deer in the headlights. And so it got scared and it just started to run and it didn't realize that I had all these guy lines and it tripped and it ended up falling on my tent on my feet. And
I slept through it.
She slept through it. I'm screaming, yelling and everything, and all I was concerned about was that the deer's hooves weren't going to tear my tent. So I get out, it had pulled up one of my tent stakes, so I re-staked it, looked at my tent, it was fine. In the morning,
she told me Jumanji.
I said, how did you sleep through that? Jumanji came running through here and it was terrifying. I gotta say, it was terrifying. But my tent held up and everything was fine. So it's been through everything. And we did, you had an animal headbutt you in the tent. So we don't know what kind of an animal, but it was quite the story.
She heard it. It was a headbutt loud enough that she heard it in her tent. She was like, the hell just happened? I'm like, I don't know. Something just smacked me in the head.
So we, our tents have been through a lot, and the freestanding tents are fun for great, you know, weekend stuff and hassle-free, but for, I think, durability, lightweight, convenience, not having poles and just using your trekking poles,
Trekking pole tent.
they're the best way to go.